Hi, good morning. We're back at Fabulous Finishes, and this morning we're going to do a couple simple cabinet finishes. We're noticing more customers coming in after the Christmas holiday now, where cabinets are kind of a focal point on how they want to do some renovations in the house. And there's two paint lines really that we like to recommend to people because they are easy, very do-it-yourself friendly. And the one we're going to do today will be with the botanical paints. And I'm going to show two different finishes on one door just so that you can see options. We show a lot of these samples in the store, and we get requests on people that would like to see it without having to take a workshop. So today what we're going to do is I have this very common to Shelby oak cabinet door. And the first thing you really want to do when you have your cabinets is you want to give them a good cleaning. You don't just open the can of paint and go right over your old cabinets. Really, there's no sanding required. If you don't have any wax or real heavy grease buildup on your cupboards, then something like a simple green, spick and span, any kind of good grease cutting product works good. If you've had like Pledge on your cabinets or you use like liquid gold or Murphy's oil, then you really want to step up your cleaning and use either like a straight white vinegar, a mineral spirits, even if you can, handle the smell. We like this product, this deep green. This one takes the silicone from those products off. That's an option as well. If you have any cabinet spots where they're kind of gummy from like a lot of hand touching and stuff like that, a lot of times it's around places where you're grabbing your cupboards, then use something like a green scrubby. Just get your cleaning product on there and give your cabinets a good, scrubbing like that. Okay, so you want to start with clean and dry. And then typically, we tell people that it's easier to paint your cupboards hung instead of having to take all the doors off. But that's up to you. But the paints do adhere right to the metal hardware. And like in this case, we don't have the hinges on here, but they were hidden. Well, actually, there weren't even any hinges. But typically, you'll see the hinges that mount on the inside. So you don't see them anyway. When you have the doors hung and you're going to paint them, it's just easier because you can do the front of the cabinet and then you can open it up and you can do the back side and both sides are wet and then you just leave them open to dry instead of taking them all off and then you have to do it kind of like this where you have to have a place to prop them. You got to work one side, you have to wait for it to dry, you're afraid to really flip it over so it extends your project by a few days. And we're all about getting things done quickly. So what we're going to do here now is I'm going to use two different colors just so you can see a dark finish and a light finish. This paint, this color is Salvia. It's real popular right now. It's a pretty shade of gray. People are liking this. Okay. And I just use these natural bristle brushes. Don't like foam. You could roll the paint if you want, but you're going to end up with kind of a roller stipple like you would get from rolling your walls. So when I do my cabinets, I like to just load my brush up with the paint, and I go into my detailed areas here if I have them first, and really kind of jam that paint in there. Okay. And I'm not going so light like this because it's going to take me too many layers to paint, but I don't have it so heavy and glunky that it's just going to, I'm going to have too much to try to fix and push about. And I want it to dry nice and even, and that's what's really nice about this new botanical line. It's a great brush-on paint that really dries back and kind of levels out where you don't see your application marks nearly like you do with like typical chalk clay kind of paints. This paint is real durable too, which is nice. So when it dries, it's not coming off, which is a great benefit. I mean, not only is it going to adhere to your cabinet like this without having to strip it and sand it and do all that, but once it dries, it stays on. Now, in terms of washability, you know, you're going to need to put a top coat on it because it's not going to be withstanding of like greasy fingerprints and cleaning, stuff like that. But look how nice that covers already just in one coat. I like to do 2 coats on everything. We get some people that really want to go a little bit heavier with their paint and they just want to get it done in one. You can use the paints any way you want. So if you choose to go a little bit heavier, that's great. We get some people that go even thinner than this because they really want to make sure they have no application marks. But I kind of do it where it's just about like that. And you want to make sure, you know, however you get your paint on is one thing, but if you want your finish to look pretty consistent, then you always kind of have to, when everything's covered, you know, try to have a steady hand, you know, not a lot of coffee drinking, and give everything like a consistent, even pull so that, you know, you're not all over the place. And if you really can't do that, then maybe you do want to roll it, you know, and have just that little bit of stippling. So that's just the single colors here. It'll dry up relatively quick. If you were doing this at home, you'd paint all your doors and probably give it a couple hours, and then if you chose to do a second coat. But like I said, if I had this hung, then I would just flip it open and I would continue and I would do the other side. It makes it real nice. And your edges are cleaner. You know, when you have them down, it's really hard to remember to get all these edges, and they end up looking a little, like, look at that, I missed that. Okay, so that's our first color on this one. Now, this other panel here, sometimes we get people that want to do a little bit of texture, and not necessarily on the whole door. We've got a couple doors here where we show the center panel that has just a little bit of something different. So here what I'm going to do is, and we've worked a few times with this thicker paint on previous shows, it's the one I like to use if I'm going to put just a little bit of something underneath my paint finish. And this door panel, what we'll do is the mulberry, which is like a blackish color. So I'm going to use this paprika color because it'll kind of go well with the black and almost look more like maybe a wood finish, you know, or like your darker woods. People are into the darker colors. So here, I'm just going to do it on the center. And again, I want it to kind of look like a wood grain when it's done underneath the black. So I don't want to just have my lines all squiggly, okay? You could roll it and have it all dotty. We've done that before on previous shows, but on this cupboard, I'm just going to keep my brush strokes pretty clean. When I do this, it always reminds me of my old, maybe this is going to date me, but my old corduroy pants. Like when I was a teenager, we wore corduroy a lot, and they were all this thinner corduroy. Now my kids make fun of me because it's like, why don't you wear corduroy? And they look at me like I'm crazy. But okay, so that's going to be my center there. And actually, I have to let this dry. Why am I thinking I'm going to paint over that with the black? So that would be the panel. That's how I would start with this one. And then I would wait for this to dry, and then I would cover everything with the black. Okay, now let's take this over to the dryer. We're just going to give this red texture just a quick dry. Now, if you were doing this at home, by the time you got around and did this texture on all your panels, it would be dry, where when you came back to put the paint over it, you wouldn't have to wait a few hours. It dries up pretty quick. Unless you went thicker with your texture, and you can do that as well. You'll see more of that, those corduroy lines coming through your paint color. I just went pretty lean. A nice option when you do something like this is if you have color, like a color of a cabinet that you really don't desire. So if you have like the pink pickled oak cabinets that people really don't like, and it's not a color that if it relays through your final paint finish you want to see, or sometimes when people have white cupboards and they want to do, let's say, a black color, but they don't want white to come through. They want to show a little distressing or reveal, but if you start with white and you do black over it, you're going to have that white popping through. Then this is a nice option where you can put just a little bit of this thin texture underneath in, like this would be the red, or there's a pumpkin that mimics like a maple color, and then it allows you to kind of change the game up where you have that hint of other color coming through your final finish. Okay, so again, I'm going to take this botanical paint, just nice and creamy, and this one's mulberry. It's like a soft black. And these paints they just glide out like they have like a oil in them, but they don't. They're all water-based. There's really no smell from the paints. They did a really nice job with this line. Okay, and same thing like we did with the gray. Just gonna go down into my detailed areas here and shove that paint in there. And you know, the other nice thing I like about this paint for a brush on, because I prefer brushing over rolling, is it stays open for a long time. So it kind of goes on, and it's on pretty thin. You can see I'm not putting it on heavy, but I can go back into an area, like if I want to go down here, and it's still wet and open, so it lets me kind of make everything perfect if I want to try to do that. Again, I mean, this is covering really nice. I probably won't even do a second coat of the black on this. Maybe on either. Maybe we'll just leave one coat. We'll see how it looks when it dries. Okay, so here I'm just kind of scrubbing just a little bit to make sure I'm getting over that texture. And I didn't do that texture really thick, so it's really not even gonna make a difference where my cupboard looks bumpy. Okay, and if you get any hairs, I love these brushes, these natural bristle brushes, but they do shed until you break them in. So if you get those hairs, don't leave it in there and think you'll pick it out later. You know, get it out now so that when it dries, it's nice and clean. I think I got everything. Okay, so this is where we're gonna take a break and let this dry. We have the salvia, which is the light gray that went right over the oak. We have the mulberry, which is a soft black that has a little bit of paprika texture on the center panel. And we'll give this a good dry, and then we'll see what we get.
My name is Cheryl Steinhurst. My husband and I are owners of Steiny's Tavern. We're located on the northwest corner of 25 Mile and Shelby Road. We offer a unique dining experience from our restaurant to our off-site catering. Everything we make is from scratch. We utilize Michigan-made products whenever possible. We're open 7 days a week. We offer daily lunch and dinner specials, and we carry the most craft beers on draft in all of Macomb County. So plan on coming out to Steiny's Tavern, where you come for the food and stay for the party.
Okay, we're back. This panel is nice and dry. We're not going to do a second coat of the color on it because it pretty well has full coverage. The paints are that nice. If you go with typically like your light colors, if you took like the whitest of the colors, usually you're not going to get as good a coverage with one coat, and it would require a second. Or like I said, if you choose to paint thinner, then you would just take your paint again. When it dried, you would do another coat, and then you would let that dry and you would move on. So what we're gonna do here, I'm gonna focus I have a 180 grit sandpaper, which is kind of like an emery board, and I'm just gonna hit this panel right here where we put that paprika. You could use a sand block. I like to just fold my paper in half and give it a little bit like that. Okay. Now, this paint really dries back. I don't know if you can see by zooming in, but it just dries down where you can't even really feel brush marks. It's really that nice. If I chose to just give this, or if I was a little heavier and I felt like I could feel a little bit of brush marks, I actually switch and I do like a 400 grit, which is almost like just a finish sand. And I would just go over my flats with that. It doesn't kick up much of any dust. And it just knocks out like any brush marks. This panel, I'm going to leave it just like that. Now, if I chose to have a little bit of my under color coming through, if I want to have it a little bit, some people don't like that, then just stay away from your edges or really don't even sand, and you'd have a cleaner look. If I want to rough my edges up a little bit, I just take the sandpaper and you just kind of don't think about where you're going to do it. Like you don't want to take it and outline all your edges because it looks a little silly. But I might just kind of hit a few areas and that's it. Okay. I don't sand inside here at all because it just isn't worth the time. It always looks good when it's finished. And I'm just going to wipe that dust off that one. Okay. And then on this one, again, I mean, it looks really nice, it feels nice, so I'm going to just take that, make sure this isn't black, that little 400 grit sandpaper, and I'm just going to give it a little bit of a punch right on the flat surface. You don't have to do that. I like to do that even if I don't feel brush marks because it just feels like as smooth as silk. It's just so nice. And you see it didn't kick up much powder at all. And it took what, a few seconds. So to me, it's just worth it. Okay, so that's where I'm at now. If this is exactly how I wanted it, then what I would do is I'd wait till probably the next day and I would put on some type of top coat. The company has a really nice one. Actually, maybe we can pull it out and we'll do it on half of it. If you want to do like a glaze over it and give it like a prettier kind of dimensional finish, then again, I would wait till the next day. And we'll only do half of it so that we can see. Okay. Now a glaze, people will ask, well, is a glaze like the top coat? It gives a little bit of extra protection, but it's not going to give you like a good sealed up surface. So I would still, once the glaze dried, I would still put a top coat over it. Okay. Now on the gray, what I'll do is we'll do a little bit of this white glaze. Okay. I'm just going to brush it on. I'm pushing it a little by doing it this quick, but I think we'll be okay. Might pull a little bit of the paint. But when you do that glaze, just jam it in those cracks, get it on, and then take a dry rag, okay, just ball it up, and wipe it off. Wipe it, okay. Wipe around your edges, and then I usually kind of stick my finger in it like that. Pulling a little bit of the paint now because it's wet, but okay. And you can have like a dry brush where you can use that to feather out any of your rag marks if you have them. Okay. But when you do a glazing, usually it's not where you overthink it and you try to be so perfect and critical. It's just supposed to be a nice soft overglaze. Okay. This one, what we'll do is we'll just put some of this mahogany color on it. It's kind of cool. This color. This glaze. And we'll do the same thing. Just get it on. The glazing's actually the fun part. It'll stay open pretty quick for quite a while. It's just hard with this paint if you try to do it this quickly, like, the same day. Because then you'll pull a little bit of your paint up. Okay, so I get that on, and same thing. Just wipe it back. And you'd be surprised, see how it's pulling a little bit of that paint up. That won't happen the next day. Pulled a lot of it up there. And then just take one, to feather out. And it's funny because when you wipe it, you think, oh, that didn't really do much. But when you look at it against the other, if you leave some of it not done, you can see the difference, okay? And then if we were going to top coat it to get a little bit of a finish sheen, then again, I would wait till the next day. And they have a nice sealer out. It's water-based, interior, exterior rated. I would roll it. Actually, I would probably roll it on. I would push it into my cracks and crevices with a brush. Okay, like this. We'll just go right up to this one as well. Okay. Okay. Ooh. Just put black on that door. And then I would roll my sealer on all my doors. And you could use a low nap roller. You could, I don't like foam rollers. Shoot, I put black on that door, sorry. There we go. And I got a hair in there too, so make sure you get all your little loose hairs off. There we go. Like you can use like a velour roller when you're doing a top coat. You know, even these work okay. These little low nap ones. And you just give it a coat, your top coat, and I usually like to pull it back through. And that'll give that nice sheen to your finish. Otherwise, this paint will dry back, like I said, really matte. And for furniture, that would be okay, but for a surface that needs to be cleaned up and washed where you're handling it, you're not going to want that, okay? So if we take the tape off to see the difference, okay, so got that tape off. Now here, like I said, this is just pulled because the paint was wet, but glazing or just a top coat over this paint, you have that little bit of texture underneath. This is just a single color where you just top coat it or you put a glaze over it. Really a nice paint, definitely user friendly. It would be very easy enough to do yourself. You'd save a ton of money doing it yourself. We do have the products available here at Fabulous Finishes. We have them online as well, fabfinisher.com. I tell you, probably a quart. I would not be surprised if it, with that black, with both of these colors, who knows? I mean, it probably could do your whole kitchen, or maybe 2 quarts, you know, max. You know, we used a spoonful to do half a door, so. But the products are really nice. Just the key is really make sure your cupboard's clean. Start with a clean surface. You don't want to compromise. And happy painting. I'm Patty Henning at Fabulous Finishes, and we'll see you next time for another show at Shelby DIY.